Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back to the Pyromaniacs. I'm your host, Rick Butts, here with Kevin Allen, aka the Geek from DFS Army. Want to thank you for taking some time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule. I know that this time of the year gets crazy for all of us fantasy football guys. All the news coming out weekly. Leonard Fournette being released this week, Adrian Peterson being released today. Always a lot of stuff to catch up on, so I appreciate you taking time out on a Friday night to hang out with us. But you want to introduce yourself to everybody that's watching and listening, and let them know who the Geek is? Awesome. Well, first, I want to say that, I've been playing DFS for a while, and I'm always, and was always, looking around at different sites, trying to get as much information because I believe, and I don't know if you're somebody that agrees with this, but it doesn't matter what kind of fantasy football you are doing. I believe getting as much information as possible is the best, right? I don't think anybody's going to just come to rotoheat.com and take our advice fully. And I think you need to get as much, absorb as much as possible, and then put that into practice on your own. So, when I came across DFS Army, and then I started thinking about who could we partner with, um, everything that you guys were doing just seemed to align with what I believe for RotoHeat. So I want to say that I appreciate that, and I'm glad we did this because we don't have a big footprint in DFS, but it's something that we get asked questions about a lot, especially during the season. So I want to thank you for that, and we appreciate it, and we look forward to a fruitful partnership with DFS Army.
Yeah, no, we're super excited to work with you guys and to sort of come in and help out with the daily fantasy content side of things uh, as an affiliate. And, of course, one of the things we love about what we do and about what DFS Army is all about is we're all about our members. We're all about teaching the techniques to the game, a lot of the stuff that you really don't get elsewhere. So our primary goal is show you the techniques that are used to construct lineups for the various contest types in daily fantasy, set up our tools to forcibly make you create lineups the correct way, and then we hope that you use your intuition, your knowledge of the game, alongside some of our insights to create the best possible lineups for yourself, and hopefully to win some big prizes or to turn a profit for the season or just to have a great time. So one of the beautiful things about fantasy football above all other sports is, listen, we all know it. We all watch football. We all play season-long fantasy football. That's not quite enough to be successful at daily fantasy, but it's certainly better than not. And then with our tools and a little bit of strategic advice, that's how we help get you over the edge and hopefully have variance fall on your side. Like we've had, we had $1 million winner last year. We had multiple 100K winners last year, taking down tournaments. So we're pretty confident that our tools work and our approach definitely works. And these are regular guys, not our staff, just taking down $1 million. Unbelievable.
So, are you the DFS player that's max entering the Millie Maker and other large entry contests like that, or are you more of the maybe 20 max entry, or a single max entry, or what's your style?
I do love to max enter contests, so I'm definitely that guy. I like to attack the big tournaments. There's nothing like taking down uh, a, a big top heavy prize, but you don't last a long time by only doing those types of contests. I try to make sure that the vast majority of my weekly allocation in fantasy football is really focused on what I call hybrid contests or single entry or three max contests, ideally ones that aren't that massive. So most of the profitability, and this is really probably not super known, most of your profitability as a daily fantasy player, if you're going to be profitable, doesn't really come from trying to win a milli maker. I haven't won it yet, and I've attacked it for many years. I've had your top 5 type finishes, but I've never taken first. It's really hard to beat out a million other people in anything in life, but most of the profitability for me has been in contests that vary from 60 people to 200 to 300 entrants, much more winnable contests. So that's what I like to focus on the most. But of course, I love my mass multi-entry as well. Probably least.
Got you.
Yeah, the least of which is cash. I kind of treat cash as I'll play it, but it's not my extreme focal point because the ROI there is so slim that sometimes it's not even worth my concentration. I hate to say, I'd rather play in small tournaments than cash games.
So I'm glad you said that though, because it's for a lot of people it's hard to figure out what contest they should be playing. So is there like a breaking point where you think, okay, maybe for your bankroll you should be concentrating more on cash than GPP, or what's your thought process on that? Because I'm the kind of person where I'm kind of like, if there's two different kinds of people. There's the kind of person that, hey, I just want to play and have fun, make the games on Sunday a little bit more enjoyable. And then you've got the person that, I would like to do this, but I'd like to make money doing it as well.
There you go. You asked, it's such a perfect question what you just posed. And it's something I talk about a lot. People don't get either side of this, which I find interesting. Some people play DFS. They are not playing to be a profitable player. And we see this in DFS Army because we have so many subscribers, so many members, and everybody seems to ask a different question and comes from a different angle. Some people are literally not there to be a profitable player. It doesn't interest them. What they want to do is throw some bullets at a big contest every week and have a shot at $1 million. It really is an entertainment. It's something to watch that weekend. It gives you a rooting interest in the games. And hey, you never know. All you need is the entry fee and a dream, much like the lotto says. And that really is an approach of kind of like, it's a little better than playing lotto tickets because you got probably a little bit better chance of cashing when you're approaching it in a sharp way. But those people they don't care to use discipline in their approach to the game. Then you have people who say, I like doing this, I want to do this, but I'd also like to be profitable. Those folks are going to put a little more effort into it. And if you want to be a profitable player, what we found over the years is, again, I was just talking about single entry 3 max. Cash is cash is great. So what we talk about and what we kind of created years ago is what we call the DFS Army ladder, or the ladder system, where you want to start, you create one lineup that is built for a high floor, high ceiling approach. We're not going to go crazy with only high ceiling players with the 0 floor, and the kind of players that I'm talking about. Like, for example, Sammy Watkins, who gives you a 0 one week and a 40 the next week. That's a tournament play. We want our high floor, but with ceiling players where we can kind of win those cash games, win those head-to-heads, especially head-to-heads I love, even more than your 50-50s, win those head-to-heads. But the beautiful thing about that is if you allocate a certain amount of funds to that, or more so my favorite type of contest, which are very small tournaments, leagues, a lot of times they're called, or small tournaments, you'll see them. I don't like to talk about dollar amounts because realistically, what I think is, a low dollar amount could be the max that anybody, it could be a $5 contest. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But if you're going up against 35 people, you can win that, right? And you got a pretty decent shot, if you're good, of winning that like 4 times over the course of a 17-week season, you're beating the odds when you do that, and you're going to be profitable over that season because when you win that contest, you're getting probably 10x your entry fee. So I like to focus the bulk of my money on those style contests. I don't care if it's 35 entrant, 75 entrant, up to about 150 entrant, much more winnable contest. And the beauty of those is you don't need to have a perfect lineup. You don't have to get silly and crazy and, take unheard of players or be super contrarian. You just want to figure out what the field is mostly going to do and maybe kind of twist your own approach just a little bit. And I'll give you an example. It's hard week 1 because there's no real chalk going on here. If you look at the actual game totals, there's just nothing that stands out incredibly extreme. But I'll talk about a couple of last season. There was a game week 3 where the Ravens were playing the Chiefs, right? And that was like a 55.5 point total. Everybody was just loading up on that game. So we knew the field was going to play that game. The field was going to be all over, specifically Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews, because Mark Andrews had scored 28 fantasy points the first 2 weeks of the season each week. And Lamar Jackson had scored over 30. So the very, very obvious, you almost can't not do this play, was you've got to start your lineup with Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews. And Lamar Jackson was actually not even priced up yet, which it was just a screaming must play. So one interesting way of getting off of that was, hey, I know this game's going to score really well, but everybody's playing Mark. He put up 30 points the first 2 weeks. Our ownership projections have this guy through the roof, and the matchup looks amazing. But, if I play that matchup and 50% of everybody else in the field is also playing that, even if I'm right, I'm still competing with half of the field in this tournament, and I haven't narrowed down the possibilities to the point where the rest of my lineup, now I need to beat 50% of the lineups with the rest of my line. I don't like those odds, right? Because I first have to be right about these 2 decisions, and especially a high variance play like a pass catching tight end. And then I still got to beat everybody else in the contest with all of my other plays. So a sharp move was, hey, no one's talking about Mark Ingram because everybody's playing Lamar Jackson to either Brown or Mark Andrews. In hindsight, the game turned out where Mark Ingram scored 3 touchdowns, Andrews put up a 4, Marquise Brown put up a 4, and everybody who stacked Lamar Jackson with his 2 pass catchers didn't win. Right? So it's not a stupid pivot where you're saying, oh, forget this game. Let me play some running back against the Patriots in a 40-point projected game. It was, hey, let me target the highest projected game of the slate still, but do something different than everybody else in this small field tournament is going to do. Feels a little scary. You want to play the chalk, got the FOMO, but you do it. And that's how you win these little contests. And just one win like that pays for that contest for almost the entirety of the season. You only need to do it once, especially if you're in a 70, 150 person contest. You win it once, you're good for the whole season. You can enter that every single week off of the money you won week 1. So that's the kind of slight pivot that we want to do. We don't want to get stupid, but you can win those leagues by just figuring out what the field is going to do and trying to be just a little different. I'm going to have another example too if you want to hear another one that's really good.
Absolutely.
All right, so last season I was in the DraftKings King of the Beach tournament, and that's the ultimate, 75 person, $22,000 to enter, $250K to first situation. Almost everybody in that contest is looking at it going, man, I'd love to win, but I don't want to finish last. Like I also want to make sure that I'm at worst in the middle of the pack, get 10 grand back because, the last place is 2,000, first place is 250, middle you're getting 7, 8, 9. So there's a lot of fear going into it. That week it was Atlanta playing Tampa, and that was going to be the ultimate chalk game. And the ultimate chalk stack was going to be Matt Ryan to Julio Jones. Now, anytime Julio Jones is going to be 50% owned in any contest, that's not for me. So in that contest, I said, I don't want to be super different, but I'm not playing Julio Jones. I'd rather play the game of Julio Jones not having a great game. And even if he does, if I spend the same 8K on someone else, I not only need Julio Jones to have in order for me to lose by fading Julio, I not only need Julio to have a bad game I don't just need him to have a bad game. If he has a good game, I could still have just as good of a game with some other lower owned wide receiver. So all of the chips are stacked against you when you play a 50% owned Julio Jones in any sort of a contest where you're trying to win. Because again, even if you're right, you're kind of wrong because everybody else in the field gets that too. So, I just switched over to Calvin Ridley. I didn't want to get too crazy with it, but in switching over to Calvin Ridley, I was able to pay up at a second wide receiver position, which happened to be DJ Moore in that contest, who happened to go bananas in that slate. So Calvin Ridley actually outscored Julio anyway. I saved a couple thousand in salary, and I was able to differentiate my lineup by having a slightly better WR2 than anyone else. I wound up finishing in 14th place in that one. I'll take it. Not too bad. But everybody who played Matt Ryan to Julio wound up in a pack together at the back. So you got to differentiate yourself without being crazy. Now, I like that because I think I'm pretty good, and using the tools and ownership projections and just the analysis we do over the course of the week, anybody could really be good at this, figuring out in these smaller contests, what is everybody going to do and how can I be a little bit different? Just a little, not too crazy. Don't have to play Mitch Trubisky, at the quarterback position and hope that he has his twice a year 25-point game. We don't have to go crazy like that. We can be different without being ridiculous. So that's kind of one of my favorite approaches to daily fantasy football and my favorite type of contest to really go after. So you can really think about it.
I will say that Mitch Trubisky has 9 touchdowns and 1 interception in his last 3 games against the Detroit Lions. That's more of an indicative tale of how bad the Lions have been, even with Darius Slay. So
do we get
I'm
Bears
a Bears
Lions
fan.
One?
I'm
do we get
Bears Lions week 1. Yes.
There we go.
I'm a Bears
Now,
fan. I was not happy about that news.
Well, look at my I have a video out on Twitter, a little clip from one of our fantasy football podcasts, where after I finished complimenting Anthony Miller as one of my favorite sleepers for the season, I suggest that the GM for the Bears should commit harikari, proverbial harikari, for his decision to trade up for Mitch Trubisky in the same draft that Deshaun Watson and I believe Pat Mahomes were both drafted in. Like, you needed to trade up. Couldn't wait.
One spot.
Trade up. One spot.
Yeah,
I'm not a
you
fan
don't have
of
to
your-
hurt my feelings on stream. I don't want to cry on stream. But I will say that I have been big Anthony Miller supporter, and I agreed with your video. I did see that on Twitter today. But yeah, it's funny because I immediately looked because I knew that both quarterbacks were, I think, 4,700 for the main slate on DraftKings this week, and I immediately looked at Trubisky's numbers versus the Lions, and I said, "Oh God, I'm gonna have to put him somewhere in here because I think 2 out of the 3 he has thrown for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he's only thrown 1 interception. So most of his professional production has come against the 5 games that he has played against the Lions, and everything else other than the 1 Washington game last year is trash. So I'm so excited now.
That probably gives us a good transition to take a look at the optimizer, and I'm going to show you how for mass multi-entry tournaments, when we're trying to win the million, exactly how you would set this thing up to take advantage of a Mitch Trubisky explosion week and all of the interconnected things that might happen to cause that explosion. So if you want to pop my screen up there, if you're able to do it, I'll give you a little quick look at how we could take advantage of that in a mass multi-entry approach. All right, perfect. So I'm looking at my screen. I can't see it there, but hopefully you guys can see this. So we just talked about Mitch Trubisky week 1, right? So what you're looking at right here is the Domination Station Optimizer. We've chosen DraftKings and the main slate, and this is the actual week 1 slate here. I don't think we've got ownership projections up just yet, but in season, and certainly as we approach week 1, where we're more than a week out, you'll see ownership projections for every player across both the showdowns, which is really, really premium stuff, and of course for your main slates. And one of the things that we want to do for mass multi-entry is the key to mass multi-entry success is correlation. We want as much lineup correlation as possible. And I've done lots and lots of studies on this stuff. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but our goal is as many interconnected players as you could possibly squeeze together in one lineup. There's a reason that the sports book does not allow you to parlay Aaron Rodgers over 300 yards plus Devontae Adams scores a touchdown. You're not allowed to parlay interconnected things because that's how you gain an advantage on the sports book, and that's how we win big tournaments in DFS. So I'm just going to show you real quick what I've got open here. So actually, let me go through it a little slower. We choose our classic. Up here, you see the games filter. So you can see every game and the spread and the over-under. It's nicely coordinated. So the highest game totals are showing in green. We don't want the highest game total. Everybody's on that. So, you look at a game like this, say, maybe we want to fade that one because that's where the chalk is probably going to be when we look at the game totals. I love this one right here, 47.5 Raiders Panthers. But we're gonna use the Chicago as an example. So I'm gonna leave that close. So we've got our game total. Now the first thing we want to do is we're gonna open up what I call the correlation stacking option, which is our system for setting up NFL stacks. Let's set my lineup number at, I'm going to set my lineup number at 10, and I'm going to show you how you set up a beautiful not Matt Stafford. We're going to go Mitch Trubisky, a Mitch Trubisky game stack here, and watch how this works. So first thing you see here is the universal rule. What this basically says is once this stacking option is open, every single lineup, if you don't force a quarterback into it that you're choosing, will stack the quarterback with at least one wide receiver or tight end from the same team and include one secondary stack. Secondary stacks are something very important. A secondary stack is not tied to the game that the quarterback is in, but some other game, and it's a stack that we found to be correlated. So you can see here we've got running back and opposing wide receiver, tight end, running back, wide receiver, same team. These are all stacks that we found over the years through our analysis are correlated, meaning one player is tied positively to the other. Running back and defense is popular. So now, what are we going to do? Mitch Trubisky lineup, right? What's going to cause Mitch Trubisky to have a big game and need to throw for a lot of touchdowns? It's probably that the Lions are also scoring, or at least keeping up. So I want to set up a game stack. So I'm going to click on Mitch Trubisky as the quarterback. I'm going to game stack, and we're going to do 10 lineups because I have the tool right now set to go, as you can see down here, I have it set to create 10 lineups right now. Now here's where it gets fun. As the user, we can decide what type of stack to create. In this case, I'm doing a game stack, meaning I'm not going to just take Trubisky and one or two of his pass catchers. I'm going to do 2. But we're also going to do at least between 1 to 3 players from the opposing team, which would be, of course, Detroit. So essentially what I'm saying is if Trubisky is doing enough in this game to where, we don't want no David Montgomery, zero him out. If Mitch Trubisky is doing enough in this game to where he's producing a milli-maker winning amount of fantasy points for himself, at least 2 of his pass catchers are going to also have success. Now, we have a lot of players in here because of the preseason, and a lot of this will not be here after the preseason, but actually I'm going to filter some of that out by using a fantasy points filter because I don't really want to see guys projected for 2 or 3 or 4 fantasy points, so I've just changed the fantasy points range. We're going to raise that up here to about 6, so I don't have to see all these different players, and now it looks a little bit more like what you would expect. Mitch Trubisky, 10 lineups, no less than 2 players. What I'm hoping for is it's going to give me Trubisky, Robinson, Miller lineups, but maybe some Tariq Cohen lineups too. We've zeroed out David Montgomery. I don't want him. He is not positively correlated to Mitch Trubisky because he doesn't catch passes. And we'll get 1 player from the Lions in these lineups. So let's just set it up basic. Put that on server mode. Hit optimize and run some lineups. Now you see down here, lineups. Yeah, I was going to say lineups are. Yeah, there we go. Lineups are. Do you have any questions so far? Hit me. Absolutely, and here you go. I mean, like, let's take a look at it now. It's unfortunate again. We have a high projection on Kerryon Johnson, so he's the guy that's popping up here at the moment. But take a look at these lineups. I want you to get a sense of how this came together. So here you've got the first lineup generated. It's Mitch Trubisky, Miller, and Robinson, and that's not surprising. Those are his primary two pass catchers. And in this case, and again, this is early in the projection world. We're not still quite where we want to be, but the comeback on Kerryon Johnson, who the projection model right now is looking at as the starting running back for the Lions. So you've got a 1, 2, 3, 4 player game stack. And as a little bonus for a little extra correlation in the lineup, you've got Austin Eckler and Chargers as a running back defense stack in this lineup. Now, again, just throwing the players aside, you got Michael Thomas in there. We love Mike Thomas, Zach Ertz. Throwing all the players aside, understand what we're looking at here. This lineup is designed to look like lineups that win Millie Maker tournaments. This is what they look like. When we do our study, it's 4 and 5 person game or team stacks combined with a single secondary stack of some sort or another, right? What the secondary stack is, it will change from lineup to lineup. So as we go to the next one here, you'll see in the second lineup generated, same Trubisky, Kerryon Johnson, Miller, Allen Robinson initial stack with a secondary stack here of Antonio Gibson and Zach Ertz. I'm assuming that the Eagles are playing against the Redskins week 1. Therefore, this is a running back opposing pass catcher secondary stack. Again, you got the same Mike Thomas and Austin Eckler in there. So every single lineup is designed to look like what tournament winning lineups look like. Now, let's say you think, you know what, I don't like Kerryon Johnson at all. Right, here's your Kenny Golladay lineup, this third one. But let's say you don't like Kerryon Johnson, and I don't. I'm not a Kerryon Johnson fan. But again, our system right now, as of this moment, is projecting Kerryon Johnson as the primary running back for the Lions. We'll see what happens next week. I understand there was some injury to Swift. I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll know more later in the week. But let's say I don't want him to be in there. So I could just zero him out. I can set a max limit. I could say, well, you know what? I don't mind Kerryon Johnson, but I don't want him in more than, I did 10 lineups, so I don't want him in more than 20% of these. I can set a max limit here of 20%. Same with Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. If I say, you know what? I love Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, but I want to make sure I get a little Tariq Cohen in some of these because he's also a pass catcher. So we can set a limit on these players and say, all right, well, let's limit Allen Robinson to 80%. That will force Tariq Cohen to show up in some of these. And if we run this again, we'll see a slightly different result. So that's essentially how we set up a game stack, which is designed to look like lineups that win tournaments. Now, will this lineup win the tournament week 1? I hope so if I put it in. But, that's just one stack that we'll set up. And the way let's let this one run through, and I'll show you kind of how the output changed a little bit. We should get a lot more Kenny Golladay, maybe even a little Marvin Jones. But again, we can adjust that and force it to make sure that we get the exposures how we want them. But here we go. Kerryon Johnson first 2, and then I limited it to 20%. So now you start to see the Kenny Golladay lineups. Here's another Kenny Golladay. And here's a Tariq Cohen lineup. So now we got a Trubisky, Cohen, Robinson, Kenny Golladay with the Eckler Chargers secondary stack. some other tricks we use to get more diversification is to increase the number of uniques in each lineup. So the higher this number, the more changeover we'll have from lineup to lineup in terms of how many unique players change from one to the next. And I do like to set uniques at about 3 or 4 when I do a main slate, because I want a diverse group of players across each of these lineups. I want to give myself the best chance to hit that miracle, perfect mix of players that will get us the nuts and win us all the monies. Now, let's say that's just one stack, but I want to do more lineups than that. So we never do just one. So I'll change this to 20, right? And here we're going to add in a second rule. And that second rule is going to be another quarterback. So, who else do we like week 1? Let's go back and, you'll look at your advice, our advice, whatever you want to see, which players you want to play. And here's the Bengals are playing the Chargers, 44-point spread. Or I really like this game here, Raiders, Panthers. I'm not sure how many people are going to be on that. So, I'm not a big Derek Carr guy for fantasy purposes. But, if you wanted to do something like that, you could set up a Derek Carr stack. I think Henry Ruggs is going to be popular week 1. We turn it into a game stack, and we can get some exposure to Christian McCaffrey that way, or DJ Moore. So the way I set my lineups up is I'll pretty much come up with 7 or 8, maybe more, but usually around 7 or 8 either team or game stacks that I want to set up for 150 lineups. I'll control it all the way down to these exposures. I can run them all at once. One of the nice things about the setup, the way we have it, is you don't have to choose all game stacks or all team stacks. I can customize them on a game-by-game and situation-by-situation basis. So I'll run another 10. One other thing I have going on here, if you want to use it, it's called the correlation boost. And watch what happens here when I click this. All of the fantasy points that are correlated to this quarterback get a 20% boost. 30% boost. I was wrong. And the reason we did that was, if you're assuming in these lineups that Derek Carr puts up a massive score that's needed to win a tournament, meaning 2 standard deviation units above his standard score, then we would assume that all the players around him score above their average fantasy production. So when we can give them that boost, and it's going to basically kind of force the optimizer to realize this. Now, and add more fantasy points to the correlated players to Derek Carr. Now, one thing, when I see Derek Carr, I don't want Josh Jacobs in there. They are negatively correlated. He is not a pass-catching running back at the moment. I hear rumors that might change, but at the moment he's not. So we give him all that boost. We give this a run. And in this case, we're going to get 10 lineups built around the Mitch Trubisky stack, and we're going to get 10 lineups built around a Derek Carr game stack with this game. So that's essentially how this tool works. It's not easy. It's very customizable. When I say it's not easy, I mean it's not just push button, win money. You customize everything. You set it up. You make it your own. And that's the reason why when one person who's using this wins the million, that doesn't mean everybody's going to win it. You're customizing everything, and that's the beauty of this tool. So let's see what these lineups look like. Absolutely. It's not a situation where I get the question a lot. People say, well, if everybody's using the same optimizer, you'll get the same lineup. That's not how this works. They're like, well, how come everybody doesn't win if one person wins? Because that's not how this works. When you're setting this up, you're setting it up. You're creating your own custom settings. Let me see what we did here. I'm just making sure what I did. Yeah, you're creating your own custom settings. You're deciding whether you want team stacks, game stacks, how you want to approach the game. Oh, I have an extra one. Yeah, there we go. It's like, what's going on there? There we go. You control everything with this tool. So what I do when I'm working this for a slate is going to look completely different from what somebody else might do, and that's the goal really of this type of a tool. And we've built it. Like I said, I use this myself for my play. All of our members use it. Our guys who we have, our members who won the $1 million, who took down the 125K, they use this tool. That's how they do it. But they did it themselves. Not everybody else won $1 million the same week. That's what happens. You do it right. I remember one week last season where everybody was on a certain game, and like Josh Allen and the Bills just went under the radar. And I think Allen put up 30 fantasy points. I can't remember the week, but like John Brown went bananas for over 30 fantasy points one week. And whoever used that, here's our Derek Carr lineup. So whoever used it and chose to do a Josh Allen game stack it was so low owned that those guys were in the top. Those guys were finishing top 20. We had a few people who did it, and a couple of them finished top 20 in the FanDuel or the draft. We actually had people in the top 20 on FanDuel and DraftKings that way. I'm not sure that there were any actual wins, but we had a guy finish 7th and a guy finish 5th, and two different sites, two different people, because they both kind of came up with the same idea. Like, everybody's talking about probably some Ravens game because the Ravens were all the rage, or Mahomes game because it's the Chiefs. But I played the Bills, and that's how you get into the tournament. Same thing happened a couple times last season with Danny Jones and the Giants. Like, that was what wins the tournament. So take a look here. We set up a game stack for Las Vegas and Washington. Call them Washington. And, here it is. Derek Carr, the Washington Football Club. You've got Derek Carr, Christian McCaffrey, the comeback, Hunter Renfrow, DJ Moore. So you've got 3 Panthers in this one. You've got Derek Carr along with Hunter Renfrow, just 1 pass catcher. Now, the reason this happened is because the projections for the Panthers players just much more sexy than the projections for the Raiders. But with the secondary stack of Gibson and Terry McLaurin, and of course, Austin Eckler is projecting extremely well week 1. I don't think that's going to change. And whatever defense was affordable here. So bunch of really nice. Here's a Derek Carr, Bryan Edwards. We love Bryan Edwards week 1, definite sleeper. But notice with the boost, with the 30% boost, all of the Panthers players are showing up pretty much in every lineup because you get these already highly projected players in a great spot and you boost them, you're going to get all 3. I don't necessarily like that, so I might turn off the boost for this one and maybe leave the boost on, but limit the number of players from the Panthers to 2. I don't really want 3 from the opposing team here. So something like that. You control everything in this system. So that's a pretty basic demo of how this thing works. I'm going to look and see here if there's any other options to go over. Obviously, we have our tutorials that can kind of show you a little bit more about how to use this, but you choose optimal or tournament mode. Tournament mode basically just spreads out your exposure to players you have a max limit set for. DFS Army points is nothing you'd ever change. Players versus defense. This comes into play on showdowns. This comes into play on 2-game slates. One of the sneakiest things you can do in tournaments is allow lots of players versus your defense. There's a misperception that if a defense is doing well, the opposing offense is not. That's just not borne by the statistics at all. Now, we don't necessarily want to use a defense against players that, a team against its defense in a full slate with 10 games to choose from. But if it's just 2 or 3 games, like the Thanksgiving slate, for example, we want to allow lots of players versus our defense because defenses put up points based on turnovers and pick sixes. And technically, if a defense gets a pick 6, the offense gets the ball back right away, down points, needing to throw. It's the perfect recipe for more fantasy scoring, not less. So we want to, whenever the slates are small, we want to allow 3 or 4 players against our defense. So that's what this setting right here allows you to do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I root for a Jameis Winston pick six because he's getting the ball back again. Like, yeah, baby, let's go. Another chance for Jameis Winston to put up some points. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, great point. I mean, this is very much getting into you've clearly used optimizers because and extensively to understand that. Every time you change a player, and the two ways we limit exposures on a player is one, either we can smash a like on our tool. We have a button here that you can hit, so you could like, dislike, or whatever you want really with any given player, where you can hit a like on them. You can also change the max projection, so the max exposure number. So let's say, I mean, we don't really do this for quarterbacks. So if I'm having some screen issues here that are separate, and I think it has to do with Skype. It's messing up my computer. Oh, there we go. So if I want to dislike a player, it's going to give them a 5% reduction in their projection. So I can hit the dislike button and we'll get a slight reduction, for example, in Julio Jones's projection. The other way we can go is we can lower the max exposure on a player. So let's say I'm getting 80% Devontae Adams, but I really don't want more than 30%. I'm just going to type 30% in right there, and that will cause the tool to look back when we're in tournament mode, and if he's in 30% of the lineups that have been created, he becomes ineligible for the next one. So it will mix him in a sort of spread out way across all of your lineups. But to your point, if you change 5 players all at once, that's going to change everything. You want to change one player because you've changed that one player, you run it again, all of a sudden those other 4 players that you were kind of getting too much or too little of, you're starting to get more of them or less of them based on each one. So every move you make affects the entire group of lineups that you're creating. So absolutely, I never make more than 1 or 2 adjustments at a time. Then I run it again, see how it comes together, see how it looks, another adjustment or 2, run it again. And if you ever make an adjustment or 2 and then all of a sudden it's freezing up because you've limited it too intensely where it can't create lineups, you remember the adjustment you made, you can go back and undo that one and try to figure something else out. So that's a really, really important point that you made about how to manipulate the optimizer without like going way too many people. What they try to do, the big mistake is they might say, well, I want 50% Austin Eckler, so they'll just type in 50% here. They'll set a max limit of 50%, and then they'll do that for 10 different players, and then it just won't work. That kind of approach just does not work at all. You have to let it run. You've got to, if you're going to use an optimizer, you've got to let it sort of do its thing. You can set some limits, but you don't want to do that on every single player, or it's just not going to be able to create lineups at all.
One question I have, and this is kind of with the optimizer, but more of a construction question. Let's say you're running, you had mentioned earlier on that you like to do like 7 or 8 quarterback stacks or game stacks for 150 lineups. Um, like, how many would you do for like a 20 max entry? How would you approach that? Would you do that different?
That's a good question. Yes, you got to be different. So if you're going to do 20 max, which is a very common approach that a lot of people want to do, it's affordable, right? You have to take stands in a way that's much different compared to 150. In 20 max, you really need to choose at most 3 to 4 quarterback or game stacks or players to build around. We want to have, if I'm going to play 20 max, I want to have a strong core of players. So I might actually find beyond my game stacks themselves. I might find, for example, that I like. I'll tell you straight right off the bat, like week 1, if I love Austin Eckler, and I do, I might just smash the lock button on him and just put him in 100% and just that's my running back position. I might find a second running back that I really love a lot, like Miles Sanders in week 1, and I might just hit the lock button on him. I'm much more apt to want to go very heavy on running backs that I think are much more predictable than wide receivers. So I might smash a couple of lock button plays and just say, you know what, I'm making 20. These are my 2 favorite running backs on the slate. I'm going to build my lineups around them, and then I'll pick maybe 3 quarterbacks to build game or team stacks around, where the only thing that's changing up in those lineups, because I've already locked in 2 running backs, the only things really changing up are the quarterback and the pass catchers. So we'll eliminate 2 variables in the lineup here. Eckler and Sanders going to make our stand. Even better if I had a third one. Like, let's say there was a special value this week. Let's say I really believe that Antonio Gibson or Chris Thompson, who's going to be, getting all the pass work for the Jaguars this week. Let's say, you know what, I'm going to take that value. I got 3 variables covered out of the 9 in the lineup, and then I'm going to build all of my other lineups around quarterbacks and their pass catchers. If you're right about the 3 running backs, hopefully they all do well, and you pick one proper quarterback stack, that's a way to get to the nuts in a 20-entry max tournament. But obviously, you got to be right on at least one of those quarterback stacks, and of course, all of your core all-in running back plays. So yes, I want to definitely reduce the number of quarterbacks I try to stack, and just the variables in total. I want to go much, much heavier exposure on my favorite plays in 20 max, because I just don't have the bandwidth to spread my exposure out to 8 or 10 different games. I've got to focus on a couple of my favorites. And the perfect guy to focus on week 1 is, like, you had that insight about Mitch Trubisky. I would build around that. I just be like, you know what? I'm building. If I'm doing a 20 max, I like this idea. I came up with it. No one else is playing this guy. He's going to be 2% owned. Let me put him in 50% of my lineups. And if I'm right, give myself a real chance. It's a low probability outcome, but if you're right, you give yourself a real chance to win that tournament. And that's all you can ask for. In a big tournament, it's win or go home. If you play with fear, you will never win these. So you have to play fearless. And that means loading up on Mitch Trubisky when everybody says he sucks.
Yes, very true, because I think that's the biggest argument or discussion, debate, when you have this talk, especially with a community. A lot of people think it's crazy. I remember, I believe it was week 3 last year, the Panthers were playing the Buccaneers, and everybody was on Christian McCaffrey. He wasn't quite to the price point where, people started to fade him a little bit, but I said I'm completely fading him in this matchup. I feel like Tampa Bay's run defense is very solid, and if there's a good chance that you get bitten by it, but if he does, he scored 3 points that week. I think it was one of the 2 weeks that he didn't go off, and you just set yourself apart so much. But you can't be afraid to do that. Scared money don't make money. But you got.
I love that you mentioned that tournament. I love that you mentioned that game. I happened to win the DraftKings Showdown on that slate, and it was a very nice lineup, which faded Christian McCaffrey and had DJ Moore at the captain position. That was a $29K win, I believe, last year. And people were like, "How did you fade? How did you know to fade Christian McCaffrey?" I said, "I didn't fade Christian McCaffrey. I ran 150 lineups." And so, yeah, I played him as my captain in like 90 of them, but in the other 60, I said, all right, what if he doesn't win? Like, sure, if he had 2 bad games last year, right? Let's say we assign a probability to that of 15%. 2 out of 17 games were bad. That's 10% probability, right? It's 50%, whatever. 15% probability, while it seems low to us when we think, man, Christian McCaffrey's, what are the chances? Well, 1 in 10. Okay, well, the chance of you winning this tournament with Christian McCaffrey at the helm, with the other 80,000 people who have him in their lineup, is 1 in 80,000. That's a lot worse than the chance of winning, than the chance of Christian McCaffrey having a dud, which is 10%. So look at the probability of us winning using Christian McCaffrey at the helm. Well, it's 1 in 80,000, because if he has the big game, 80,000 other people in this tournament did the exact same thing. So damn well, rest of what I do better have been awesome. But I played DJ Moore at the captain, and it was a 3% owned play. So I only had to compete with a couple thousand lineups for first place. And that is the difference. So when we're attacking a mass multi-entry tournament, you have to play for low probability outcomes, because even though they seem low probability, they actually increase the probability of you winning. That's the whole thing. That's the game theory behind all of this stuff.
Absolutely. That's awesome that you won that showdown on that exact slate that I was talking about, because that was one specific week that I remembered last week where I said I'm going light on McCaffrey while everybody else goes heavy, and if I'm right, it sets me completely apart from the field, and you winning that is proof of concept.
You probably clean. You should have cleaned up on that slate. I had another person that week win, and it was funny. They actually opened up 2 contests. I believe it was a $10 entry, and they opened up 2 contests, whatever. The first one filled, and I for whatever I have this memory of this other one of our other subs who also won the contest, but he won it in the smaller $10 entry, and I think his win was $12K. And I said, and I just thought it was funny. I was like, guess what? Same lineup, same dollar amount, 29K, bitch. How do you like that? You know what I mean? But I was happy for them too, of course. That was awesome, and that was just more proof of like the optimizer doing the right thing as well. I love it when more than one of us win tournaments, especially at different price levels, because it's just proving to me, wow, okay, this tool that we built, that we spent so much time designing to do these things, is doing it successfully. Because you don't know. You don't know until you see it. And then you're like, yep, it's working like it's supposed to. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Is there anything else in specific that you would like to cover here while we are on the optimizer?
I mean, one quick thing I can show. I mean, obviously we have tiers as well, and that's a different format. It's pretty self-explanatory, but we talked about Showdown, so I think it's noteworthy to kind of take a look at the Showdown slates and how they work. And Showdown slates are a little bit simpler. We've actually built this, like I said, exactly to do the things we want it to do. In other words, we would attack Showdowns and try to figure out, all right, what do I need to know? What capability do I need to have in order to make this tool do what I need it to do or what I want it to do? And what we came up with was basically, if player X, like Pat Mahomes, is captain, then we figured out certain things, like if a quarterback is captain, then it's a lock that generally a couple of their, or it's likely that a couple of their pass catchers will be in the optimal. Not even just one, because if it was just one guy, that person would be the captain. So in order for a quarterback on DraftKings in particular, the way their scoring works, to wind up in the optimal, he needs to either have run for multiple touchdowns, which Lamar Jackson can do, and we know the quarterbacks can do that. But if it's Matt Ryan, he's not running for touchdowns. So we know they need no less than 2 players of their pass catchers in the lineup with them. So we have the ability to say, stack Pat Mahomes with Kelsey, Hill, Sammy, Hardman. And even if we think Hilaire is some sort of a pass-catching running back, we'll see. You could say, if Mahomes is captain, stack him with no less than 2 of his pass catchers. We made that rule, right? Other rules that we make for showdowns, for example, we found that it's extremely rare, that borderline impossible, but at best extremely rare, that 2 kickers or 2 defenses end up in a lineup together. So we just say if Chiefs defense is flex. Exactly 0 of what is this? Houston?
Yes.
Texans. So exactly 0 of Texans. So essentially we can set up rules on the Showdown to force the tool to create lineups that look like lineups that have won. So we've done extensive studies on the Showdowns and see what won, and there's just certain things that seem to repeat. Again, 2 kickers, very unusual. Borderline never has happened, or if it's happened, it's been 1 or 2% of the time where they're in a winning lineup together. So Harrison Butker in the lineup, then we don't want. Oh, great, I got to remember a freaking kicker name. That's not going to. Is Alex Mago a kicker? I don't even know who their kicker is. But
yep.
Kaimi Fairbairn. Here we go. So exactly 0 of Kaimi Fairbairn, and then we do vice versa. If Fairbairn's in there, 0 of Harrison Butker. So for Showdowns, it's very, very important. You don't want to make too many rules, but to have a few fundamental rules in there, and the tool allows us to do that. And of course, to control our captain position against the flex. So here with captain, the way I control it is I'll say you set exposure minimum, and that will force certain players into the captain role. So we'll say, hey, I want 10% Reek at captain. I want 10% Kelsey. I want 10% Hilaire. I definitely want some Will Fuller. We found that actually wide receivers are the most likely players to win you the tournament as a captain. So, you get all these players in here, and when you run this, you'll get your exposures exactly as you want. Here's David Johnson. So we'll just basically control our captain position here, and then of course get some exposure to the quarterbacks. I rarely put quarterbacks at captain on DraftKings. It's not my favorite unless it's Lamar Jackson. Then of course 100% Lamar. And our final thing is our DraftKings rules. So one thing to note when you're using the optimizer, DraftKings requires at least 2 customizations. So you can get that by liking 2 of your favorite players on the slate. I love Travis Kelce. I love Tyreek Hill. So we essentially just adjusted both of their projections up a little bit. We've satisfied the DraftKings rule, and here we go. We're running lineups. We don't make 3 for the Showdown. We make 20. But one of the really nice things that we have going on that I'm going to show you here in a second, it's not showing, but I'll show you a little bit of what you'll get in season ownership projections. So right here in the exposures box, you'll see, hey, I've got 100% exposure to Pat Mahomes, and it'll give you the projected ownership for the player right next to it, and it might say 75% for the slate. So as somebody who's trying to really work the ownerships and some game theory, you might say, you know what? If Mahomes is going to be 75, 80% owned in this contest, maybe 100% is too much. Maybe I want to reduce him to 30% and play it like you played the Christian McCaffrey play when the Panthers played the Bucs. It's all right here in this little screen. So you can, again, it's not here now because it's Friday. We're still a week away. But you'll have ownership projections right next to your actual exposures, and you can look at them against one another, compare, contrast, and figure out, all right, is this what I want to be like? Do I really want 50% of this guy, Isaiah Coulter, who I never heard of? No. Give me a 0 over there. You know what I mean? So you can control your exposures and really, really, oh, that's right, Randall Cobb, that's my guy. But really, really control what you get in terms of output and allow yourself to focus your entries against exposure and trying to leverage the field however you want to assume the slate is going to go.
I love it.
There we go. Lineups. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the basics of how to use this stuff. Obviously, when you're done making your lineups, you download them. Download your lineups, save it, upload direct to FanDuel, upload direct to DraftKings, whatever you want to do. It's really easy to do once you've done it once or twice. And one thing I would say to your listeners and the people watching this, if you want to mass multi-enter, you don't have to spend $10 or $15 an entry. It does not have to cost $2,000, $3,000. FanDuel has quarter games. FanDuel has nickel games. DraftKings has something called a mini max, which usually costs between 50 cents to $1 per entry. So this idea that you can only do mass multi-entry if you're some big bankroll player is just simply not true. Anybody can do it. There are mass multi-entry contests at every dollar level. So if this is fun for you, this technique of trying to beat the field, it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend $2,500. Just because you didn't win 50K doesn't mean you didn't beat 100,000 other people in a nickel game and win 150 bucks. So I don't care what your budget is. I don't care if you've got $7 to enter a nickel game or if you've got $7,000 to enter a $33 max. It doesn't matter. The techniques are the same, and I would actually recommend anybody who's just getting started with mass multi-entry to start with the nickel or the quarter or the 50-cent game. Learn it. Prove that you can win it before you ever step up your dollar amount. Don't just jump into the 15 saying, hey, I have a tool now. I'm paying a monthly subscription to access it. I better make my money back and make my 50K. That's not going to work. You know, that money, it's learning. You got to learn how to use this. You know, you will blow your... Whenever I enter one of these, Rick, I fully expect every time I enter any every time I enter 150, my expectation is I will come out of this down 40%. Because that's the majority of the time what's going to happen. I almost always lose money in these until I win it.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? You win it. But until you win it, it's I enter 150 and just break. It like never happens. I'm usually either down 30%. Sometimes you'll be up a little bit. Those are great. I would say on an average season, if I did mass multi-entry for the main slate 17 times, that I would have lost money 9 times, broke even-ish or made a slight profit 4 or 5 times, and hopefully finish top 10 2 or 3 times. That's the most I can hope for. And ideally, one of those top 10s would be a win. Almost every year I've had a win, or 2 or 3. Especially in the showdowns are much more winnable in fairness. But on showdowns, there's a difference between a win where you tie with 150 other people compared to an actual win. Even the 29K Christian McCaffrey one was a tie with 4 or 5 people. That was like 100K to first contest. So, you know, it was probably still a tie with 4 or 5 people or 6 or whatever that was. It's very, very rare that you just straight up win one of these, but you want to get that. It's not uncommon to win with 150 people when it goes chalky on the slate. The ones you want are really where you can win with like solo. I've never done a solo, but I hope to.
My only showdown win was a 21 lineup chop. Luckily, I had 2 shares because I accidentally put the same lineup in twice.
Love that.
That was
So I mean, 21 is.
That was the Drew Brees record game. Traquan Smith with the 2 long touchdowns. Traquan Smith and the captain.
Traquan the chef, man. I remember that game.
It's like the only good game he's ever had.
And kept chasing that game for like an entire season. After that, you know, it was Traquan. Got to get a little Traquan. He could do it again. They never did it again. Him and Jeremy Sprinkle will live in infamy. Jeremy Pringle will live in infamy as one-time only explosions that we chased for the rest of the season. If you remember the Pringle game, where the Chiefs got some injuries and this guy comes in and just goes bananas in a showdown at 0.01% ownership.
See, then there's the guys that you're the opposite on. I chased Anthony Miller for so long and then just quit right before he had his explosion in the second half of last year. So by the time I got back on him, it was too late because more people were on him.
Recency bias, one of my favorite, you know, in the video I just did where I was talking about this, it's the most counterintuitive thing ever. Recency bias. We're programmed as humans to believe that what we saw last week will happen again. It's just the way our DNA is programmed. So when we all play T.Y. Hilton in week 1 and week 2 this year, and he does nothing. And we try it one more time week 3, and he does nothing again. And now I've had so much pain and so much suffering chasing this guy, who I know is a big play guy, but he's done nothing for 3 weeks. Week 4, when he goes off for 40 fantasy points at 2% ownership, wins somebody the million, you're like, shit. Oh, where was he the first 3 weeks? What happened? You got to keep going back.
Yep.
You got to go back till it's painful. You just gotta keep going back. I mean, there's nothing else you could do, and that's what tournaments are about. You have to almost, when it doesn't work in a mass multi-entry tournament, you have to be like, all right, good, we'll try it again next week, and just not care. But we don't want to do that in our 3 max, where we're putting more money into each lineup. There we want to play a little bit more floor conscious, so to speak. But in our tournaments, in these milli makers, I don't care what he did the week before. Go back to him. The lower the ownership, the better.
Absolutely. And that takes, I asked you a question off stream, and I figure we can end up the show with that if you didn't have anything else optimizer related. But, we talked about the different mentalities of going into DFS and where you're at. A lot of, when I first started playing DFS, it was kind of like fantasy just in general. Like, this is my fun time. This is a hobby, whatever. And then I was, just from my basic knowledge of fantasy in the NFL, I was doing decent enough that I said, you know what, if I actually concentrated on this, then I could possibly have some success. So my biggest fault is just that I'm not ingrained to be disciplined enough, and that comes from my background in poker, gambling, and in Vegas, and all that fun stuff. But this year, after really digging in the last season, and then wanting to upgrade and change that philosophy this year, I found your guys' ladder system, and I'm saying, okay, well, this year I'm gonna follow that. I still have to have a little bit of my gambling. It's fun to chase, but I'm going to be concentrating heaviest on that ladder system. So my question on a personal level, and I'm going to be covering this in articles, and this is going to be out there for the public to see how my lineups play and how that bankroll that I have set for this goes. But week 1, I'm playing like $600 that I have set for this ladder. How would you approach that? I've got all my contests that I've kind of looked at and built off of, kind of to set aside, but I want to see if my thought process of this ladder is lining up with what I'm learning from DFS Army.
Perfect. Well, I like this question. So let's get into it. The first point of order would be, you can go 2 ways with the $600 budget. What I might do is I might say, all right, I've got $600 that I want to use for ladder entries, period. Now I like something called 3 max, right? 3 max tournaments, 3 max contests is my favorite type of contest. They tend to be basically small tournaments that allow for as many as 3 entries, and that's the perfect mix. So if I said, hey, let's take your $600 budget, let's split it into 3. We're going to have a primary lineup with $300 worth of entries in there based on one lineup. We're going to have a secondary lineup, $200 worth, and a third lineup that's going to get $100. Each one is going to be built as a pyramid. Now, what we mean by pyramid, and so essentially I'll just focus on the $300 one. And if you're planning to do just one $600 pyramid, you can expand this to 2, to double this. But so now we've got a $300 pyramid built around one lineup. We want to start at the bottom with the most winnable contest, which are either 50-50s or head-to-heads. So I want to put about 50% of my money into 50-50 or head-to-head contests. So as any player should always know, and if you don't know this, now you will, you want to start at the cheapest dollar amount for these types of contests. You want to max out how many $1 head-to-heads you can do. You don't want to do one head-to-head contest against some shark for $150. Definitely never do that. Now, let's say you did $150 $1 head-to-head contests to start your ladder off. Why do we do this? Well, head-to-head contests, when you do a lot of them, will give you a bell curve distribution of scores against you. So you can be slightly below the mean and still kind of break even on those entries. If you're slightly above the mean score, let's say the mean score for that tournament, the cash line, so to speak, is 100. An example. If you score 96 points or you score about 105 points, you should just about break even. As you move ahead of the mean score, so let's say you put up a 120, you might win 75 to 85% of those head-to-heads. If you put up a 140, a tournament winning score in that kind of contest, or a tournament cashing score, you might win 90, 95%. Now, the reason we start with those 50-50 odds contests, it's a way to discipline yourself, but also if it works out well and you have a great lineup, you're going to win all of those. So you're going to double your money right off the bat, right? And now all of the other contests that you entered above are there to create profits for you. Let's say you're slightly below the mean. Well, you're probably going to lose your upper ones, but at least you'll get most of that 150 back. You live to fight another day with some of the money. So we start off with a base of 50-50 odds type tournaments, even 3-1. So triple ups, for example, could fall in that category of the first half of your money. If you want to go a little bit more aggressive, I tend to do that. I like triple ups. I like even quadruple ups mixed in there. Then we want to allocate the bulk of so you have another 150 left. So this is where we're going to ladder up. I'll start with I'm trying to think with that number, $300, we got about 150 left. So I'll go like an $88 entry, like 66 to 75 entrant type contest, right? I'm trying to focus on a winnable contest, something that I can enter and I have a reasonably good chance of taking down first place if I've constructed my lineup well. So that's the perfect type contest. Let's say like an $88 or a $77. Depends on what contests are available, of course, for each slate. But something under 100 entrants or in that range of 100 total. Your odds going in are, it'll pay out the top 20. So you got a 20% chance in that contest, or the top 25%. So you got about a 25% chance of cashing and a reasonable chance, a much more reasonable chance of winning the contest if you have a great lineup compared to, a Millie Maker where you could put a great lineup in and you get 1.5x on your money because you still finished in 1,000th place. Now we ladder up from there. So I put in my $88 sort of 100-person winnable. Now I go with a $33 contest that has 500 to 700 entrants in it. So as good as this lineup is, we want to take advantage of it in every level. Is it good enough to win against 500 to 700 people? Maybe. If it is, we've taken another $33, we've laddered up, and that contest might pay out 5,000 to 10,000 to the winner. So we went from an $88 contest, which is great, $5K to the winner. I wish I had it open in front of me so I can see actual winner numbers. But right. 88 times, I can't do this math. I am not able to do this live where I can figure this out. But maybe that contest pays out 5K. Maybe the $33 contest, if you happen to come in first, pays out 10K. Right? Now we've spent 88 plus another 33. We're at 120. We've got about $30 left. We go up to the next level, right? $12 contest, 8,000 entrants. For the final, $12, we got about, so we've spent now about, I don't know, 140 of the 150. I'm estimating here. I don't have a pen and paper. For the final leg, the top of the pyramid, what we could do is take that budget and either kind of get into like a 20. What I might do is take the last $20 and just do a $1 20 entry max with the Dom station and just attack some crazy big tournament and forget that lineup. Or I'll take that lineup and throw it into the Millie Maker and just say, you know what? If this is that great, you should not have a Millie Maker winning contest in that approach. Like your 3-max should never win a Millie Maker. The winner of it could, but the winner of the Millie Maker really is going to look like something with Mitch Trubisky at the helm. It's not going to look like, or some crazy stack thing that no one's thinking about. That's what's going to win the Millie Maker. So I don't really even bother throwing that lineup in that type of contest. I'll get up to about like a set of 33, 700 entrant. Maybe I'll do like a $12, entry, like 5K entry contest. And then I'll take the rest of that budget, let's say another $10, $20, whatever, and throw 20 entries in a $1 mini max. I'll make it on the Dom station using some crazy game or team stack combination of low owned players, almost hedging against the other thing. So that's lineup number one. You've spent $300 in total. You've got one lineup and then a little crazy tournament stack going at the top that's unrelated. Next up, you do the exact same thing with your second handcrafted lineup, except half all the numbers. So a $44 contest, a bunch of head-to-heads maybe, and then a $44 contest with 80 to 90 entrants. And then maybe like a $15 contest with 400 to 500 entrants. It's all about the odds of winning. So as you move your way up the ladder, you increase the size of the tournament while decreasing the amount of money allocated to that tournament so that you could take full advantage of that one or two great lineups, like special lineups that you'll build over the course of a 17-week season. So the bottom half of the pyramid is designed to keep you in the game week after week. I'm getting some wins. I'm getting some losses. I'm doing 50-50s. I only need to be slightly above the mean, just one little bit above average to make all my money back. All of your double ups win. Some of your head-to-heads win. You get a lot of that money back every week as long as you're just slightly above average. And for each standard deviation unit above the mean you are with this lineup, the more chance you have to cash in the 80 person, to cash in the 500 person. And when I say cash, ideally we want to win. We want to win the 88 person. We want to win the 500 person. And then we hopefully want to win the 5,000 person contest. And if you could complete that ladder, you didn't enter that much, you didn't risk that much, but you won 10, 15 grand. That's how you take your bankroll in DFS from what it is to a big bankroll. You only need to hit the ladder once or twice over the course of an entire season. If you've cashed all the way up to the top of the ladder, and let's say you hit a couple of firsts, that pays for your whole season of play. A whole football season. You never have to deposit that year. You might never have to deposit again. So it only takes one of those. And my firm belief is we all have one special lineup in us every football season. That's all you need is one.
I like that.
After that, just be okay. But I believe we have it in us. Like you have an insight about Trubisky week one, go with it. You know what I'm saying? Like it might not happen week one. You keep at it, and you'll find that special lineup at least once over the course. That's all you need. That's all you need to have happen. Football is a short season. NFL 17 games. That's nothing. Variance is crazy, but all you need is that 1 week, that one special lineup. It sets you up in DFS where you never have to redeposit again, or you don't have to redeposit again for that year, or maybe never. But again, in the end of the day, we're doing this for fun. We're doing this for excitement. You're a gambler. You play poker. You go to the casino. A lot of this is just about getting my heart pumping, having a sweat going on Sunday afternoon, win or lose. That feeling is worth the price of admission every time. And that's why I play. I play much less for the money than I do for the excitement, for the challenge of the win. As crazy as that sounds, I mean, even my wife asked me, like, why are you even watching this shit? Like, just look at the end. And I go, you don't get it. Like, if my heart's not pounding and I'm not nervous and pacing around the room watching it, literally sweating, then why am I doing this? That feeling is why I do this.
Absolutely. It's so fun. It makes Sunday so fun. Checking your lineups throughout the day is a blast, and every time somebody scores, especially if you're playing a lot of lineups, it does something to one lineup that may negatively affect another lineup, and just the overall feel that you get from that is awesome. But as I always say, if you're going to do something, you might as well make money doing it. So again, I appreciate you coming and answering questions. And Friday night of a holiday weekend, I know a lot of people are going to probably watch this later and have questions. So make sure you go over to Twitter and follow Kevin at FFootballGeek. And follow DFS Army at DFS Army. Check out dfsarmy.com. use the code Pyromaniacs for 20% off of their VIP membership, and that will also get you into their Slack. I First of all, I want to say that I pay for DFS Army myself. It is something that I feel is a very valuable tool, and I wouldn't recommend them to anybody else if I didn't put my money where my mouth is. Um, and then also, rotoheat.com/discord. That'll get you into our Discord, and the RotoHeat team will be there, and we'll be sharing our thought process throughout the week, and we will be dropping 5 videos minimum per week on DFS on our YouTube channel. So, Kevin, is there anything that you wanna add here before we get out of here?
Not at all. We appreciate you, and we use that promo code when you sign up. I believe you get your viewers will get 20% off of monthly VIP, which is currently $49.99. So after 20% off, they will get a nice little discount. Do it quickly. Our prices are going up as soon as we can get our web team. It should have gone up already, but as soon as we can get our web team going, those numbers are going up. We never raise prices on current members. But we've added so many sports recently that actually it's become quite burdensome, with esports and MMA and all these different things. So we're kind of separating things out a little bit down the road. But right now, that's not the case. So use that promo code, come on in. And yes, we have a chat. We'll help you out. What you see here is just a little piece. I can spend hours and hours talking about this stuff, to be quite honest. And I do every single week. We really try to hold your hand, as you know, and teach you how to use these tools, and really teach you how to bring your own ideas out and bring your own customizations, bring your own thoughts and leans to the table, and supplement that with tools designed to help you approach these contests in the best possible way. So that's all we can do. We know we're going to have an awesome football season. So hope you guys join us and jump into DFS Army. And we'll be there with all our videos and all our cheat sheets and all the stuff we do to help you have a successful season and have a lot of fun.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate it, and I'm sure you and I will be talking more, and maybe we'll do this again in season sometime. And for everybody else,